Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 659. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the master of speculation, the duke of the sultan of strategery, the bridge-defying, and is proud to announce that the absolute version of himself is also the best way to experience him, because he, of course, remains the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going?
Jim, on this episode, we have a great Speeding Bullets segment where we have a listener email that we wind up sharing talking about the Sandman and all the recent DC news. I want to thank our Facebook group community for helping out with that. We also talk about DC Mech #1 and Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler's one-shot. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have Punchline, the Gotham game, issue 1 of 6. 50% off, only $1.99. And we have Riddler, Year 1, issue number 1 of 6, also 50% off, only $2.49. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, there's always the top sellers, and I like browsing through here to see the books that maybe I've missed that people are buying. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow trade paperbacks, $19.99 regularly, 45% off, only $10.99. Batman Rebirth, the deluxe edition book 6 hardcover, is $34.99 regularly, 45% off, only $19.24. Robin and Batman hardcover, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. And the just released Batman Earth 1 complete collection trade paperback, $39.99 regularly, 45% off, only $21.99. I want to thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. We have a contest that's quickly coming to a close. September 3rd, it's ending. You have a chance to script Jim or to replace Jim for the spoiler warning on this podcast. Come up with a clever idea for a spoiler warning for the show. We'd love to air it on the podcast. Or if you don't want to do it yourself, you can certainly script one for Jim, and Jim will do it on the show based on your direction. I like this idea of somebody being a director for you as well. You can either send that to us at ragingbullets@gmail.com, call into our show voicemail line and leave it on the voicemail line, whatever way is more convenient for you. If neither of those options work, feel free to shoot me an email or contact me via Facebook, and I'll be happy to work with you on a way to get that to us, because I want as many people as possible to be a part of this contest. First, second, and third prize winners, it's all the same thing. You're going to get your choice of trade paperback or hardcover from DCB Service or InStockTrades.com for the month of September. So it can be something from the past, it can be something that's presently going to be pre-order available, whatever you want. And you also get a spot on the show where you're going to pick a segment that we're going to do based on the book that you choose. Again, if you don't want to come on the podcast, but you want to choose the book we do on that segment, that is perfectly fine too. We'd love to have you join us, though. That's part of the fun of these type of contests, is get a chance to talk with you about a book that you are jonesing about that you'd like to discuss on the podcast. So remember, midnight September 3rd in any time zone, we would like you to have those contest entries in. If you have any problems, feel free to contact me. We want to make this easy for people so that way they can participate and have a shot at getting a trade or hardcover of their choice and a chance to join us on the show. So thank you for everyone who's considering participating in this podcast. Jim, why don't you show them how it's done? What kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
All right, Jim, for Speeding Bullets this week, let's just chat about some of the recent news. It looks like we do have some confirmation that DC's Black Canary solo movie has survived the Warner Brothers cuts, which is good. That's a piece that I want to see. Red Hood Outlaws is available on Webtoons, which is really cool for anyone seeking that. Ezra Miller, we've been talking about him a lot over, I think, the past few episodes when we've done Speeding Bullets. I don't know, truthfully, what allegations are. There's so many allegations now. There's something going on. I was glad to see that he's seeking treatment for some mental health issues. And, hopefully he gets the help that he needs. At the end of the day, I'm very sympathetic to anyone who's going through issues, and obviously there's been a lot going on, so hope he gets the help that he needs, and that's always a good thing. we've been getting finally some positive news, at least I think some positive news coming out of the whole HBO Max thing, because we've been hearing cancellation after cancellation or question marks. So it looks like Peacemaker's continuing to move forward. Great. Second season of that. First season was great. The Penguin show is still moving forward. That's kind of a no-brainer, right, with how successful the Batman was?
Exactly.
Green Lantern Corps, it looks like, is still moving forward. So yay to all of those things. So that's something that, fingers crossed, continues to be the way things are going now. I'd like more announcements of things that not only are surviving the axe, but maybe some new things that we didn't know about. Let's get some excitement going around all of this. The CW has been sold. And, anytime that changes to new media, that doesn't affect shows that have currently been announced for other seasons and things. But what that means long term is something we as fans are going to have to watch. The CW, obviously, wow. Think about how long that's been around. How much great programming has come out of that. It's CW in many ways, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, was kind of revolutionary in the kind of programming it brought to the table that we take for granted now, right?
Oh, big time, dude. Big time. You think about just how much interconnected superhero, storytelling we were getting from just the CW. Again, the gritty version of Green Arrow.
Yep.
Yeah, Ollie never. Well, most of the books I've read, Ollie wasn't that the dark brooding hero. And
wait, Mike Grell run. Go back and read that. Well, okay, it's been a long time.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Longbow hunters, we throw that aside. I'm talking like just everyday standard. The majority of the run. Yes, there have been some runs where and those are brilliant runs. So I'm not taking anything away from that. But for me, it is still. It is different that Ollie is that dark, brooding hero. He's the version of their Batman in the CW universe.
So let me ask you that, because it's interesting, and this isn't disputing you, it's more perspective. I guess for me, I found an Ollie that I was very familiar with, and one that actually, for me, did connect with the current comics. But that's, we as what is great about doing this show with you, we sometimes see things differently. So it's, immediately I jump to, because of my own personal feelings, that this is an Ollie I'm very comfortable with. But again, admittedly, I didn't just read Longbow Hunters. I read all of Mike Grell's run.
Right.
So, and then read him beyond that, and I guess I found that the television version of Ollie is very much my perception of Ollie. We started reading at different times, though, and you're making an excellent point, so I got to be fair to you on this one. I guess, so you were a big fan of, like, Team Arrow, and, I mean, my gosh, there were times on the show where you were, like, ready, I thought, to throw your computer aside with excitement on how much you were digging what was going on in Green Arrow. Was the TV Arrow different to you than the Arrow you're reading in the comic books? And there's no right or wrong answer to that. You're making an interesting statement here.
The TV Arrow I saw as the early version of the Arrow, how I saw Green Arrow. And I kept seeing the evolution. By the end of the TV series, I started seeing the TV Arrow and the comic book Arrow as coming together. Because as I said, I saw him starting off as very gritty. He was killing. He was doing all that. And then as he started pulling in people into the team, as it stopped being a one-man army, he started being more of a hero than a vigilante. And then once he did that transition over to heroes, when he stopped being the Arrow, he is now Green Arrow. And it's it was that evolution and that growth, and that was one of the things I really loved about the series. Yeah, he still had a little bit of a darker feel to him, but you could truly see the positive light. You could see him being a hero, not a vigilante. And I thought that, for me, was something really cool in the growth. Now, again, with Longbow Hunters, the Mike Grell run, I read it, and it's absolutely brilliant. But I didn't read it when it came out. I read it afterwards, because of, either through the show or because you talking about the show or people, at cons talking about it and whatnot. So
we don't see this any differently, though. I mean, I'm saying this I actually love the way you explain that. And actually, I'm going to just say ditto to your I think you really summed that up perfectly. That is exactly how I see the show. And I love the way you explained it. I mean, and that journey is exactly what I mean as a reader reading Longbow Hunters into the comics that we were currently reading. That was the journey the TV show took me on. We see that completely the same way. It's funny, though. you're making a great point. You went through that journey with the show. I had already gotten there in the comic books, but wanted the show to get there. So I think we both had a similar experience, but it was from a perspective of where we were at as far as how we saw Green Arrow and how we journeyed with Arrow. You did that on TV, which is really cool. That part's a different sort of take, but it's just a matter of what we read beforehand. That's cool. I totally agree with you. I mean, very cool.
Yeah, and that was the thing I loved about the show was because we were seeing that evolution. Same thing can be said evolution of a hero in Flash.
Yep.
You really saw that. I love that, going on with just the birth of Team Flash and just, the maturity of Barry in that, but he still always had that Flash style, that Flash dun-da-da hero, true heroism to him. So I absolutely love those two characters. And again, for me, I always looked at them as the Batman and Superman of this universe. Even though Superman eventually was brought into the fold and all that's, Supergirl was brought into the fold. But when they first came on the scene, when it first was just the two of them, I looked at them as a Batman and Superman arc. Because, you had the dark, brooding hero. You had the, here I come to save the day kind of Flash, running, and the bright costume and just the hope. That is Flash. It was for me, that was a really great way of handling it. And it was something I liked because I was like, you know what? We're getting those characters that are popular with everyone else, but they're using it different people. They're not using, Batman. They're not using Superman, but they're still telling that same story arc. Then once they start expanding out the universe, and it was just a great thing. And it's funny. I've been listening to that the small talk. Or talking small or
Talkville.
That's it. Yeah, I get that name of it. And they're talking about and the one I can't remember which one it was, but they said how, in a way, Smallville brought about this. Smallville was kind of the thing that helped launch what is the CW. And I agree with them. Like, yes, that if there was never a Smallville, I don't know if we would ever had these great shows. So for me, this was it's sad, but it's not sad because hopefully things will continue on. Maybe we'll get another version of this. They can always take other heroes and do that kind of stuff. The HBO Max is able to continue on with some stories. We can get it that way. But this is the kind of universe that I absolutely enjoy, which is this interconnection to them.
It's not just the interconnection, though. And that's not agree, yes, to everything you just said. So let me just say exclamation point versus this isn't disputing. It's building off of what you're saying. First of all, jumping back to Smallville. Smallville very much was proof of concept, right? What they did is they felt out the process. So you look back at season 1, and Talkville's talking about a lot of that right now, how it was the, the Meteor Freak of the Week kind of thing that was very reminiscent of season 1, but, that show evolved over time and developed like a template of how you can do these longer form 22 episode seasons with a tight story arc. And the shows that came afterwards built off of that, right? They were interconnected, which, yes, to what you're saying, it was great to have these big shows that were able to do crossovers and things. But besides that, they had their own 22. And the reason why I'm referencing 22 episodes, you mentioned HBO Max. I love HBO Max. I love HBO's platform as far as storytelling. But you're not usually getting 22 episode seasons. You're getting half of that, usually. And that's not a knock on that. It's a different kind of storytelling. And you don't get sometimes those character personal episodes that are... When you've got to fill a 22 episode season, you've got a larger story. Yes, there's key episodes that are moving you to the end game of the season. But there's also episodes where you really get to know the character that are almost like, I don't want to say fill-in issues because, I'm referring to comics when I say that. I don't want to say that because it almost seems like when you're saying that you're diminishing it as some kind of throwaway thing. Think about how many one-off issues there are in comics where they're just great. It's a great, tight story that tells you something about a character you didn't know before, tells you something about a villain that you didn't know before, or multiple characters, or relationship moments that you can't do usually in your regular stories. These 22-episode shows are able to do that and give characters a chance to shine, and you care more about them because of it. I don't want to see this kind of programming ever go away. I love streaming. I love the fact that streaming offers unique opportunities. And everything you're talking about with like HBO Max, to get to Netflix, to Disney Plus, and all of them, they're doing these more compressed seasons. Sandman is an 11 episode, at least right now, it's 11 episodes. They just released an 11th episode of that. So I love that delivery. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's something to be said about traditional television with the 22 episodes that is something meaty as well. Speaking of that, Smallville, I'm not Smallville, I'm sorry, I've got Super Smallville in the brain. Superman and Lois is recasting Jonathan Kent, and it looks like Jordan it's Elsass exits the CW series. And it sounds like that was something that was coming, but it's a shame because I really like him as Jonathan Kent. Like any show, you can recast and make it work, and, I have faith in the casting team because they did such a great job casting this show from the get-go. But that's a big character to lose, and I've really enjoyed him on the show. So I'm anxious to see what happens from that, because that's one of my favorite shows right now, Superman and Lois.
Yes, and actually I hope he's okay, because there's some indications it could be personal issues. I don't know. There's a lot of rumors flying. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully the actor is okay. Mm-hmm. So, and if he needs help, he's getting help.
Yep.
Because again, I really enjoyed his portrayal. I liked the range that he showed. When you get, one of the things I like is when you get some of these younger actors and they show really good range. And they can, you can see the, just the troubled teen, the emotional, the anger, and you start seeing, you can see glimpses, and you're like, okay, I got to remember that person because they're going to do some stuff. They're gonna do something, later on in life. I'm going to see a movie. I remember when he was Jonathan Kent, and that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping he's okay personally.
I'll jump real quickly back to Ezra Miller. I was glad to see that announcement, the outreach, and the acknowledgement of, hey, I got some stuff going on from Ezra Miller. I hope that's not shallow, meaning I hope that there's some depth to it and he actually gets help. In this case, with the kid, I got to admit, I don't know all the details. I've read the article that was posted on our site, and thank you, Jared, for posting this. It's whenever somebody's, there's a lot of pressure when you start taking on jobs like that and moving. It becomes very fast moving, and it's a lot of work. You hear that on Talkville, right? The amount of hours that they put in to make that show happen. So I'm just referencing 22 episodes. 22 episodes is a lot of work, and that can be very high pressure. So, if that's the case, and if he needs help or something like that, I hope that they get that, and I hope that becomes more of a thing. Finding ways to support people that are basically that are putting together these products that we enjoy. So that way, more and more, we see people being able to, I don't want to say survive it, being able to thrive in it, I guess is a better way to look at it. How can we catch this earlier? How can we catch needs earlier and help people to be successful? So that way they have the support that they need. They're able to, to navigate these sometimes treacherous waters and deliver the product that we enjoy while at the same time having their own health in place. So I think he was terrific on the show and will forever love the episodes that he was on and hope, wish him well. Mark Silvestri is getting a Black Label series, Batman the Joker, Deadly Duo #1. That preview art looks so sweet. Yeah. I'm anxious to see. I'm glad it's a Black Label series because it looks like he gets to have fun. I am enjoying what's going on with DC right now, where we've got these different books. Like we're going to be talking about DC Mech on this episode, right? Where these are stories, and that's not a Black Label, but I mean it's a story that's playing with the toys, and I like ones that are set close to continuity. I like ones that just completely go wild with it. And everything in between. We're at a really cool time where we just seem to be getting more and more. This is a positive announcement to me, right? It's like more work, more opportunity, more different things to read, a different kind of Batman story. I really enjoy Mark Silvestri, so I'm looking forward to this one.
I was going to say, and the award for the best comic book title goes to, stealing that one from Jared, and I completely agree with him. DC's Grifter got run over by a reindeer. I laughed out loud with that one. And of course, it got me singing the song, but that's a whole other side story. But yeah, dude, I'll tell you, I like
you were singing. You were singing the song.
Yeah, Grandma got run over by a reindeer. So you just change it to Grifter got run over by a reindeer.
That's all I was looking for. I just wanted you to do it.
Come on.
I needed it. It's funny, for as much as I complain about your singing, apparently I like it in some crazy way. I'm excited for that, too. Those are books that I've grown over the years. I will say when I was younger, I don't think I appreciated those as much. Books where it's clearly, at least there's an attempt at humor in what they're doing. I'm excited to read that one.
Yeah, and I always get these holiday specials. I like their holiday specials.
I do too.
And it's one of those things where, I'll tell you, is when I was younger, when I was a kid, I never would have gotten a holiday special. I'm like, it's not the main thing. I only wanted the main story. I didn't want the side stuff or any of that. As I got older, I'm like, I appreciate just these side stories that have nothing to do with continuity, that are just, and I don't even want to call them palate cleansers, because they're not palate cleansers. They're just, outstanding stories. Like, just recently, I reread one of the Valentine's Day one that they had, I think maybe 2 years ago or something like that. And it was just, I was looking at I was looking at iZilla, and I had a bunch of books, and I just saw it. I'm like, hey, I haven't read that in a while. So, I downloaded it, and later on, when I just needed to read a comic book, I read it, and I do that with all these holiday ones. They're all loaded on iZilla. So when, when it comes out, I'll read it initially, then maybe a couple months later, I'll read it again. Or maybe, Christmas in July sometimes I'll read a couple holiday specials. And so I always like these things. I'm glad they're keeping doing this, because these are some of the books I worry about not coming out.
Yep.
As they start talking about cutting down the line, reducing line, this and that. These are the titles. These are the kind of things that I'm like, how are they going to keep doing this? Because I don't know how well they sell. I don't know any of that stuff.
I think they got to be selling pretty good, because we keep getting more of them. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, we seem to be getting if not every month, it seems like every other month we're getting a different one. And I say that loving it. I feel like I'm getting a lot of them. And one of the things I enjoy about them is, first of all, it's putting some top-tier talent on there. Ones that are well-known to DC fans, and talent maybe who haven't done much at DC before, but are now getting a chance to stretch their legs and do some short stories. I mean, there's going to be stories in this one focused on Animal Man, Black Canary, Hawkman, obviously Grifter, Harley Quinn is going to be involved in this. John Layman, Max Bemis, Kevin Scott, Michael Conrad, Dustin Wen, Christopher Mitten, Skylar Patridge. I mean, multiple creators. I mean, I'm looking at this article. I'm geeking out over the talent associated with this. These are not throwaway books. And I find, I mentioned this repeatedly. I almost feel like at this point I'm kind of behind the times in even saying that, because it's been a long, long time since I feel like any kind of short stories have been just kind of tacked together. There's just such quality talent involved in all these now. And I think for the tenure of our podcast, we've seen this trend of just great, great anthology titles being put out there. And I'm glad DC's continuing to do this, because some of these are stories that sometimes they need to be like shorter, really tight, well-told stories. And with just amazing talent and surprising talent. And I love that. HBO Max hit with layoffs. I mean, I don't think that was a big shock. We knew that was going to be coming. I'm very protective of HBO Max because of what kind of where you were going earlier. I feel like that's where we're getting some of these unique DC experiences. I was really happy to see some positive news about series continuing on that I was worried about. So I'm glad that they're going to continue going forward. I'd like to see more new announcements. I'm hoping anybody who is losing their job off of this merger lands on their feet somewhere, really positive for themselves. I hope out of this merger comes some stability for the platform and an opportunity to continue to explore some content and make some noise. Because that's really important in the streaming wars nowadays, right? It's that your service is making noise. And I feel like we're at a point where we're seeing a lot of cancellations or announcements of price increases, and less about quality new series. Netflix, though, I mean, we'll talk about Sandman in a little bit. My gosh, is that a world of awesome? But I'm very anxious to see what television's going to look like, because I guess for the longest time I felt like we were heading towards streaming's where everything's going. I think right now it's a very volatile environment. I don't know what things are going to look like 5 years from now. And that's an interesting sort of thing. Where is this actually going? What are people going to gravitate towards? Because you hear sometimes about people gravitating back to cable and satellite. I don't know how all this is going to play out, but for myself, I really enjoy right now this combination of live TV and streaming that I have, because I think they offer two different kinds of programs, as I was alluding to earlier. And I like a variety of content. So I'm hoping all of this stuff survives, because the power of choice is something that we have now. And I'm spoiled. You and I grew up with, 3 channels, and then, 2 like UHF channels. It was 25 and 43, I think, when we started out, and then we had 3, 5, and 8, which was NBC, ABC, and CBS respectively. That was before Fox and things like that came onto the scene. And we had the TV 61 that came years later. So we had 5 channels, and 2 of them came in depending on where the TV was at in your house, which was a reality. I mean, it was all antenna based. So now it was like, and TV had to be destination TV, and if you were lucky, everyone else in the household wanted to watch your program. And and if they didn't, you missed it. That was it.
Exactly.
Nowadays, I feel like I've got programs that are competing with each other, either that become available at the same time. It's very hard for me to keep up with all the stuff that I'm going to watch, and I have the opportunity to watch it whenever I want, which is a very different playground than you and I grew up with. It's interesting now.
Yeah, like at my house, what we got going on is, me and Dad are here, and on the one TV is where we got our Fire Sticks. That's where we got all the that's where I've got my Netflix, I've got my HBO Max on the one TV. So if there's stuff that's only available on that, I got to be down there when Dad wants to watch it as well. Like Sandman, I've seen a couple episodes now, but I've got to pick the time when Dad's not around, because he 100% is not even interested remotely in that. It's a bit weird and freaky for him, just because he doesn't like the groove, and I'm not going to... He'd sit there and he'd watch it because he's cool that way, but I'm not going to do that to him. So I've got to plan it, and you got to figure out what is available, what's not. It refreshed me back to when I was a kid, and growing up, we had one TV. We had the main TV, and everybody had to agree on what was on there. And like mom and dad had veto power over anything. If there was something they wanted to watch, we watched it. Like anytime musicals came on, Mom would veto any TV watching, and we would watch Music Man, West Side Story. Mom loved that one. And just we would always watch these different musicals. So that's one of the reasons where I get my love of musicals from is, as a kid, I always watched every one of the main TV.
Yeah.
So it's and it's funny. I look at just how many
and by the way,
options.
Wait, Mom had good taste.
Mom had good taste.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, her son just doesn't have the talent, but I still love singing. So lucky you guys. But now it's funny. I'm looking at now what we've got going on. And it is kind of neat how there is so much out there, and we're and every so often Dad and I were like, okay, we just surfing around, see if we can find something we want to watch, and just there's so much out there that it is kind of funny just how many options we have, and how many times we're sitting there and we go, let's just watch this movie because we've seen it 1,000 times. Lethal Weapon movies, Dad and I have watched those things thousands of times. Shawshank Redemption, thousands of times. We see it like, let's just watch this. We know how it goes, but we still love it every time. So it's kind of interesting to see, with all the options we have out there, what is going to survive, what's not going to survive. Where does this play into the hierarchy and whatnot.
We've got an Amanda Waller versus Stormwatch miniseries coming from DC, which I'm very... You tell me anything Amanda Waller, it's great.
Yeah.
But I love... Stormwatch I've become a big fan of. And I think you and I had the same experience where Worldstorm hit and like kind of introduced us heavily into the Wildstorm universe. And I started reading stuff that came before and, you know, got really up to speed on Stormwatch. So I'm excited. Yay, bring that on. Good stuff. Blue Beetle Graduation Day, which was a previous round robin contestant, is getting a opportunity to pop onto our shelves, and I can't wait for that. Yeah, more Blue Beetle, because that's a character who I miss. I loved reading that character monthly. So not having that character around in, you know, because we had, 2 books, was it, that were monthly with him? At least. There were at least 2 books, and, you know, I get confused with, like, one-shots and miniseries and things like that, but that's a character. Jaime is just a great Blue Beetle. I hope that film still goes through because I desperately want to see it, and this looks like it'd be a great way to build some content towards that. The best possible announcement of the world. Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns returning to a new Golden Age one-shot, a Stargirl miniseries, and an ongoing Justice Society of America series. Like, somebody just said, what is your Christmas wish this year? And gave it to me in August. Yes. Like, it's here. I mean, this is like everything I wanted. And if you had told me what would be your ideal solution to, you know, what your JSA needs are, I would say this and not believe it would happen. And yet it is. So kudos. And I don't know how this all came about, but thank you, Jeff Johns, for coming back, because when it comes to this content, oh my gosh, and Johns, I trust. And I'm hoping at some point in time, this leads to, we're getting, I know, another JSA animated feature, but I would love a JSA movie or TV series. I don't care which, but I hope this content is a prelude to maybe a potential of taking that and really doing it well. I'm hoping maybe Black Adam bringing to spotlight and film some of these characters may lead to that. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, me too. I completely agree with you. The Jeff Ember, you know, as they're calling it in the one articles, I guess. I agree completely. Yeah, it was funny. As I was reading this, I'm like, oh my God, Sean's got to be going nuts when he sees this.
Oh,
because, you know,
so happy.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I'm right along with you. You know, you're more of the JSA guy between the two of us just because you have a longer history of them. But I still love the JSA. And then add to it, you know, one of my top writers doing it. I'm like, okay, this is like just a dream right now. So, you know, and the funny thing is, I love when he does projects that you know he absolutely loves.
Yep.
We've heard multiple times how he says he loves these characters. So you put a talented writer on a subject that he, you know, characters that he absolutely loves to write, you know you're going to get something epic. You know, so I'm 100% looking forward to reading these things. You know, thank you.
Yeah, and my love for Hawkman, you know, when we talk about my insane love for Hawkman on the show, the story that I always liked the character before it, but the return of Hawkman, when Jeff Johns in this neat little tiny bow explained all of the different wacky Hawkman continuity, it made me not only love where the character went from there, but made me have an all new appreciation for everything that came before. I started becoming like a sponge for Hawkman material because he found a way to say every story before happened. That's something I think a really talented writer is able to do. And he did it. That's, to me, if you were to ask me, what is your first Hawkman primer? Go find that JSA, The Return of Hawkman storyline. I just think that is, like, stellar. Hit it out of the park. And leaves you really in a good place as a reader to really read anything Hawkman related that would interest you. We're going to see no more Young Justice. And I'm sad to see this because I've been making my way. What I did is I jumped all the way back to the beginning. And I've been making my way through it, not because I forgot any of it or anything like that. Because of streaming now, it's kind of fun to go back to the origins of a series and just watch it all the way through. So I've been binge watching Young Justice and really, really digging it. So I liked the idea of, well, great, we're getting more content. We're going to keep getting more Young Justice. And I'm glad that they've given us the series that they have. And I'm just sad that we're not going to get a season 5. I'm sad whenever we're not seeing more animation in general, because I feel like hand-drawn animation, or in combination now with some of the digital effects that they do with it, is something that seemed to be on a resurgence lately. We're starting to get more of it again. I really like it. I love 3D animated, the stuff that Pixar's doing, and Illuminations, and I mean, you can go on and on about the cool 3D animated stuff that's out there. But I really enjoy hand-drawn animation and hybrids of hand-drawn animation and the digital stuff. So I'm always sad when we see these kind of things canceled. But we're getting that Batman series still, I believe, which I'm excited for. That Batman animated series that's coming, because I haven't heard anything about that being in trouble. And I'm hoping Penguin's like a good sign of, no, everything Batman related that you heard about is still going through.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Bat is safe. Anything that's got association and connection to the Bat is going to have, they're going to give it a try, at least. Even though, as I say that, Batgirl, of course, obviously didn't make the cut, and they got dropped after filming, so having a Bat title to it isn't 100% guaranteed work. But, it's, again, like you, I'm sad to see Young Justice go away. I'm sad to see any of the stuff go away. But, it's as long as they keep trying. That's why, like with the Blue Beetle one, I'm really worried about that, because that's got such a solid potential to be some epic storytelling. Because, as you said, when the books came out, we loved those. Those were some great, that was some great work there. And it was a different hero. And we kept comparing him to DC's version of Spider-Man, because he had that younger essence, that younger innocence of learning to be a hero. And it was just a great story being told. But they personalized it to fit him. So I'm hoping, when you see cuts, that it's not going to be cutting everything. They're still going to give us new things. They're still going to try stuff.
So we're getting 2 bonus episodes to Sandman, and the first story is A Dream of a Thousand Cats, and the second one is Calliope. And I'm just glad to see that. And the first one's an animated episode, and has like a who's who of Sandra Oh, David Tennant, Michael Sheen, Neil Gaiman's in it. I mean, there's
nice
as voice actors. I mean, it's really, really cool. This Sandman series is absolutely phenomenal. We'll actually talk about it in a listener email that we've got coming a little bit later in the episode. But I'm just excited for that. Not only for that news, I'm excited to just watch and enjoy that.
Yes.
DC Comics celebrates the 90s with a new Wildcats series. Now, you, I think, became a big fan of Wildcats when that was relaunched too. Is this something that's on your radar and you're excited about?
Oh, definitely. Big time on the radar, big time exciting for it. Yeah. Again, all the Wildcats, all the Wildstorm, all of that stuff was because of the show. Now, it was funny because I remember seeing them when I was in college, but I don't remember reading them in college. Because when we were in college is when the first run came out. That was in the 90s. So I remember when I was in comic shops seeing the books and seeing like advertisement for them, but I don't ever remember reading them, if I did or not. So again, the podcast introduced me to them, so I really read them for that, and I was like, yes, give me more of this, please.
Boy, it was my exposure to that in the 90s. It was when the whole Wildstorm thing hit, and it was all these talented artists from Marvel, and I was reading a lot of their work. Spawn was coming on the scene, Wildcats was coming on the scene. We had things like Wetworks and all of that. It was Savage Dragon eventually came on the scene. These were books that had these iconic talents that were branching out and developing their own characters. And it was really an interesting time because I was struggling to try and find budget to read everything. And there were times where I was like selling comics to buy comics just because I wanted to read more. And you'd sit there and go, I'm selling these great books that I like, but I want to read these new ones. And it was a fun time. But Wildcats was one of those that I started reading. The only reason why I stopped was I didn't have the sustainable budget. I was working a part-time job going to college, and I was reading. I was going to the comic shop every week, and I was reading every week. It was such. I remember jumping from comic shop to try and find things, because you'd get to one and like a hot book would get sold out, and you'd have to go to a different one, and try to find them, and that quest was so fun. I mean, I like the immediacy now of being able to go to the comic shops, but also to have digital as a backup to be able to find things. So you've got, both, you've got all that option now. The quest is something that I don't feel the urgency of the quest now in the same way that I did. I feel the urgency to get the books and to read the books, but I know they're there. I mean, it's easy to grab them now. The quest was fun. It's a weird thing to say, but because the victory of finding it and getting it and having that a part of your collection was something that it's hard to replicate now. And unless, you're all physical. And so people listening go, hey, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. That's still on my radar. I've stayed all physical. I love all physical. And I applaud you, because, if you're listening to this and that's your path and you're still getting that feeling, hold on to that as long as you can, because it is awesome. I've become so hybrid now that I don't feel the quest the same way that I did before, but I'm still loving comics just as much. It's just a very, very different approach.
Oh, definitely. And it's one of the things that when we first started going to conventions, I was getting the back stuff, the back stuff that I didn't have, and that was the hunt, and I remember when I can't remember which title it was. I want to say it was my Nightwing. I was filling in Nightwing, because when we started off Nightwing, I started picking up that 1 year, the 1 year later series, and that's when I started picking up. So I had to get all the stuff before that. I'm hunting through, and and I remember I was at the one. It was at New York, and I found the last issue I needed. And right on the floor, I'm like, yes! I held it up over my head, and I realized, oh, Jim, you're in public. I came down, and the guy looked at me. You needed that issue to complete your run, didn't you? I'm like, yes, I did. He's like, outstanding. And the guy actually gave it to me for free. And he's like, take it. Complete your run. I'm like, thanks, man. But that was the hunt. And I haven't, there's been so many years since I've done that. I keep looking at, my comics. I keep thinking, I'm going to start going back into the older of like the Action Comics and Detective, and start really going back into the hunt, and actually start doing it for those older titles. And like Wonder Woman's another one I was thinking about, start piecing together and actually getting a paper run of Wonder Woman, together, going back into, my goal is to maybe get back into, the golden ages of the titles.
Tom Palmer passed away, and he was an iconic Avengers, X-Men artist. I'm going to undersell Tomb of Dracula. I'm going to undersell the contributions that he's made. One of the things that whenever this type of thing happens, I've found myself doing is I go back and start looking at some of their work, either the work that I've personally read and loved and enjoyed, or even like runs of theirs that I've never read before, but I've heard good things about. Because, like I said before, we're just in an era where that accessibility is there. And the reason being is, whether you've read or enjoyed the material from these great talents, these are talents that laid the foundation for people that you're reading today, because they were influenced by talents like Tom Palmer. So I know I'm a big fan of his X-Men run. I'm Tomb of Dracula became a book. Actually, I got into Tomb of Dracula because of Comic Geek Speak. They were talking about it, and I ended up reading that and really enjoying it. But Tom Palmer, just a true talent, and somebody who I'm sorry passed. And I'm going to be looking forward to this week enjoying, just kind of reminiscing about some very cool work of Tom Palmer's that glad to say as a reader I have the opportunity to enjoy and embrace and appreciate what he contributed. There's a lot of talent out there that comes before the time, for all of us, that came before the time that we started being readers, right? Because comics have been around so long. There are people that influenced generations. It's always sad to see those people that have made their mark go. One of the cool things about comics, and it's one of the reasons why this art form needs to remain on the radar, needs to be enjoyed by new readers, not just the current material, but the material that came before. Because like any art form, there is something to garner from every era of comics. Every era of comics moves the needle in a new direction and embraces the time and reinvents itself during that time. You and I have done like classic, and we did the Camelot 3000 recently, for example. Neither of us had read that before. And it was a very different era, but yet you could appreciate that today with a fresh lens. And that's something that I hope continues on. I hope that people will continue to go back and embrace classic comics that they haven't read before and make some noise about it, because that stuff is really, really important to what we're currently reading now, like any art form. When you and I are lucky enough that we've grown up with the Cleveland Art Museum, and the nice part about that museum is you get to see, art and contributions to art from various eras. I feel like we get to do that as comic readers all the time, by going back through time and enjoying those pieces, and I think it's just as important as anything that you and I would see in the art museum. Tom Palmer's a big loss, and I'm sorry that we lost him. Jim, I mentioned there was a listener email. Let's go ahead and read that right now, and then we can talk about that and jump into our comics today. Hey there, Sean and Jim. My name is Logan Fuller, and I have to say that I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I love that you guys cover comics, take us through the story, and then give us your opinion on them. My brother and I always listen to your podcast whenever we drive back home, which has been more frequent as of late. So we try to stay up to date. I was just wondering if you guys have read the Sandman comics and or seen the new Netflix adaptation. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on the comic and the show, because you seem so knowledgeable about the storyline DC has, so I'm interested to hear what you guys thought of them. I love how your podcast feels like a passion project. I don't care how much you make from it. You both just have tons of fun, and it really shows in your content. I love the energy you both bring to the podcast, and I'm glad to have stumbled upon it. You guys make something like this special. Keep on doing what you're doing. Logan Fuller. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Logan. And let me address the One Piece first. We don't make any money at this. We actually, one thing, let me pull back real quick on that. We do have a show sponsor, DCB Service, that has been with us for a long time. And if you've been a long-time listener, you know we've had sponsors before that. What they do is they help offset some of our costs to put this podcast together. Now, I don't do a Patreon or some of those other things that are out there. I'm not saying that we never will. If I did, it would be something where we would offer additional content. But being honest, that's not on my radar right now. I'm really, and Jim and I are both just very committed to getting this show out as frequently as we can to you. What DCB Service does is they help offset our costs, our monthly costs to run a podcast. There's hosting behind the scenes. There's website costs to keep this going. There's those pieces to it, and they help us come close-ish to break even, and they're very generous with us. So I want to talk about how much I appreciate sponsorship like that. Over the years, we've had listeners that have sent us stuff. There's been all kinds of cool things that have happened. But there's podcasts out there that do a great job of monetizing their podcasts. This is exactly what you're saying. We're a fan project. I'm not knocking any podcast that's monetizing in the ways that they are. I think it's great for those that have. This for us has always been a hobby thing. It's been fun. You know, the idea is we're fans who are trying to do a fan show, and that's kind of what you get. So I'm glad you're getting that vibe out of this. The Sandman. I'm going to go with my history of Sandman first, I think, and then we can bring you can kind of jump in up to speed. Sandman was something I picked up in the 90s. I was working at Diamond's Men's Shop's clothing store, and we had nights. It was our outlet store there. And my boss was like really cool. As long as we took care of customers, as long as we made sure the store was clean, made sure the stock was straightened, made sure the place was well organized. Anytime that we had left, the idea was make sure that we were available for when customers came in to take care of the place. Because we were an outlet store, we were kind of a storage facility for the other stores too. So there was times where we had like dead spots, where there was nobody coming in. So I was able to do my schoolwork at work. I was going to college at the time. I was also able to, there was nights where I brought in comics and we were sitting there reading. And when I say we were sitting there, I brought in comics and then people that I was working with got interested in reading them. One of the books was The Sandman. It was at a time where I jumped on Sandman not right at the beginning, but it was getting buzz and Vertigo was getting buzz. And there was a cover of Sandman that just got me really interested. And I just jumped on from there and started going forward and reading The Sandman, because every trade that's out now was an arc, right? So there was a new arc. I happened to jump on the new arc and was really enjoying it. Well, I remember bringing like multiple issues of it in, and I was passing it around, which for me was a cringy thing because of the fact that, other people are touching your comics and reading them, and are they going to get fingerprints on them? Are they going to bend them, or what are they going to do? But the part that made it all worth it was the fact that I'm at work and having discussions with people on The Sandman. What it was people that thought they knew what comics were, that they were just superheroes, that were friends of mine, that were, in one case it was my friend Evan, who was slightly older than me, and my friend Scott, who worked there, who was younger than me. They were both reading this and just loving every minute of The Sandman because it was something so different than what they expected from comics to be. And it's Neil Gaiman. I mean, it was, that's literature that you're reading right there. So I will always have a soft spot, not just for my experience reading all of The Sandman, but being able to have shared a couple of storylines with people that I work with and seeing how accessible comics can be to a larger audience. Take that to the adaptation now into the show, and you're seeing this. We've got an audio adaptation from Audible that anybody listen to this, if you have not checked out the 2 Audible adaptations that are out right now, and my understanding is they're going to keep continuing those knock it out of the park. We've got this Netflix adaptation that every episode feels like a well-produced issue of the comics, with some changes that make it, appropriate for TV, like knock it out of the park for TV, and a casting that is brilliant. It's just such a great time to be a Sandman fan. And for me, I feel like since the 90s, the Sandman has just been a part of my life. It's been something that I revisit, I reread. Now it's the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic, to get those Audible stories and to be able to start enjoying those. Wow, is it just really such a cool thing? So the Sandman for you is different because of the fact that your exposure to it came from this podcast and hearing me have diarrhea of the mouth about it. It's an interesting sort of piece, and you actually spoke just a little while ago about how home is kind of a juggling act of programming. So what is your history of Sandman? What have you read? What do you feel about Sandman? And have you had a chance to see the Netflix adaptation?
Okay, well, first off, feeling on Sandman is absolutely wonderful. I love it. I really was exposed to it because of the podcast, because of you and other friends of ours who talk nonstop about just Sandman, about Neil Gaiman, and that kind of got me interested. Okay, who is this Neil Gaiman guy? Because I had no idea who he was until Raging Bullets came about. And so I started reading some of his other stuff. I'm like, this guy's good. I like his groove. So that's where I got. Then as soon as I said I like his groove, everyone kept saying, "Oh, you got to read Sandman. You got to read Sandman." So I started reading some Sandman. I picked up the trades. I picked up a couple trades. I read the trades. I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I started getting the absolute. So I've got the full absolute selection, which to me is absolute joy of reading that with the larger oversized. And when I feel like a Sandman, I sit down and I flip through and I read it. And it's that process of the big oversized tome. I like that over having it digitally. Because iZilla is awesome, but there is something about that physical book, especially the leather-bound, oversized, just awesomeness.
It makes iZilla tiny. iZilla's tiny in comparison to that oversized.
Exactly.
Yes.
But it's also the feel, the smell, the paper. It's a story that seems to fit just a physical copy.
How about that binding? The binding because it's got a very special binding. It feels like it was, not feels like, it looks like a fantasy tome.
Yeah.
In the way that it's crafted. I mean, they did a really good production on all those volumes, including Death, The High Cost of Living. I mean, it's really, really cool. Sorry, I'm geeking out as you're talking about these giant absolutes, because I would say if you have not read an absolute ever, and there's a book, even if you own the Sandman, which I already owned it, like this is an absolutely the optimal way to be reading Sandman, as I agree with you, in Absolute Edition.
The Absolute's the absolute way to read it.
Yes, amen. I agree.
But, okay, so that's my reading exposure to it. And again, I absolutely love the story. So that was something that it was one of those things that I remember you gave me your guarantee on it. You said, if you read it and you don't like it, yeah, I'll give you the money back for the book. Because that's when I first bought the first trade, was because you gave me the guarantee on Sandman. You know, and again, it's obviously I didn't collect money back from you. I loved it. I continued on, and it's grown. The TV series, I'm only 4 episodes in, because as I said, I've got a juggling act of finding free time. Because again, it's not my dad's groove, so I'm not going to force him to sit through it.
Sure.
But I absolutely love that TV show, and it's funny. I don't want to say, I don't want to compare the two. I don't want to say which one I like more, because I like them for different reasons. You know, for the reading experience, that has, as I said, the book itself and just everything about that. It's just like I sit down. I've got, I'm sitting down. I completely clear off my desk. You know, so I've got a nice open space, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm just taking a couple hours and just going to enjoy this volume. You know, and whenever I read Sandman, I read from beginning to end, one sitting.
Really?
I don't stop and go throughout it. I set aside, I'm going to read volume blah, blah, blah today. I'm going to read volume blah, blah, blah today. I'm going to read a death today. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to read it, and that's what I'm going to do.
And you read the entire volume in one sitting?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yes. Well, and I'll tell you, it's not like I'm not saying, I do this every week. No, I have a period, like, I've got to do it. Like, watching the TV show has gotten me back to wanting to do it again. So I got to pick. It's a couple hour process to go through a full volume.
Couple hour? It's got to be a lot more than that.
No, I don't think.
Those volumes are huge.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a daily process.
I was going to say, I'm like speed reader. How are you reading that book? Because some of those stories are pretty dense.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to, because it's been a while since I've done this. Just so you know, last time I actually sat down and did this was it was before Mom passed. So it's been a couple of years since I've actually had a moment where I can sit down and do it. So
I'm feeling like I have these images of you like sitting down with that tome at page 1, and then by the end you've got a full beard there, Rumpelstiltskin. I'm like, that's how I'm envisioning this reading process going. Granted, you have a grin on your face.
Yes,
but you're really hungry. Probably like need some like hydration.
Well, actually, that's something that again, normally I'm very careful about. I don't have any liquids near my books or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I'll sit there and I'll have a nice cup of coffee or some type of drink, some tea there, and it seems like it fits the process. That you sit there and you take a sip of the coffee as you're reading. You read and take another. It's a process. It's an adventure.
I've got the perfect birthday gift for you for your next birthday.
Okay.
I'm going to get you a hat. Don't bother me. I'm reading Sandman. It's going to have like 2 little spots for water bottles and straws. That we can just keep the hydration going. You don't have to get up.
Yep. But now for the TV show, it's funny because again, I don't want to compare the two because they're two dramatically different things, but they're both wonderful. I absolutely love that TV show. 100%. Sit there and, I see and I feel, but it is a different processing for me, because of that visual stuff. Just like the visual of Sand himself, looks so dramatically different how he was drawn in the book versus how the actor is. But you still see why they casted him. I love the casting of him.
Can we get a little spoilery about the first episode? Remember when he escaped? And they had that like it was all of a sudden that like energy was like coming through, and you saw that light show. Tell me that didn't look like the panel from the comics.
Oh God, yeah.
His hair was like brushed back, And I thought they just did an amazing, I don't need that everywhere throughout, but the Sin City adaptations did that really well, where they had certain sequences where it almost looked shot for shot like it was from the comics. I don't need that in Sandman, nor am I saying that, but when they did it in that sequence, I'm like, wow, that is pretty darn close to the artwork, and it was the right spot to say,
yes,
remember this?
Yes, 100%.
That was totally a wink and a nod to the fans, and I appreciated the moment they gave us there.
Yeah. Oh no, and I 100% agree with you. And again, it was one of those things where I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I geeked out right along with you because I had the exact same thought. And you can see there's spots where they really did. Again, this is they 100% followed the true story. And we're getting it. Any changes made, I'm, either didn't notice them or I'm like, hey, I like it. It's good. It's fine. And same thing like with casting. Absolutely loved casting throughout it so far. I'm as I said, through 4 episodes. Love all the casting. Love what they're doing with it. I have no issues. Only thing I wish we would have gotten a Neil Gaiman appearance, and if we did, I missed him. I was hoping, we would get an appearance of Neil Gaiman in the book, in the TV show. And if he's somewhere in the crowd and I missed him, then someone let me know and I'll go back and rewatch the episode. But that's the only thing I wish. I was kind of hoping like he'd do like a Stan Lee.
Well, he does voice for one of the episodes.
Yeah, but again, physical appearance is what I was hoping.
You want an Alfred Hitchcock kind of thing.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock, Stan Lee,
sure.
However you want to word it,
I get
something like that. I think that was the only thing I wish they would have done. But if he's doing voice in, I don't know if I've seen that episode that he's done the voice or not.
It's episode 11.
Yeah, okay, I definitely haven't seen it then because I'm only in 4. So, yeah. But yeah, so it's but even that isn't a criticism of it. It's just I was hoping in episode 1 he'd have an appearance. Or he'd have a voice, or he'd be like the night guard sweeping up, or something like that. I don't know.
And believe me, I'm not disputing you on any of that. It's what did you think about so instead of John Constantine, we have Joanna Constantine. What did you think of that?
Dude, come on, it's the Impossible Girl. Perfect casting. I love it.
Yeah, I was geeking out too, and those are the types of tweaks and changes that they made from this. The way they handled Lucifer is a little different. I think when I say a little different, thematically, they've done exactly what you're saying. They've captured everything. And actually, the tweaks that they made in this, really work. And it makes this a complementary piece to the books versus it being a competition between the two, which I couldn't agree with you more when you were saying this isn't about what's better than the other or anything like that. They're very different experiences. And I love that. More Sandman. What I really want to see that will geek me out, the success of this has me smiling because what I'm hoping we're going to get is Death, the High Cost of Living. I'm hoping we get an adaptation of that. And I think our odds are really high because of how successful this is that they're like, oh, let's do the whole thing. Let's reel the whole thing in. And I hope we get Death because I struggle to say what my favorite Sandman story is, but I think it may be the Death, the High Cost of Living. And which is a spinoff, admittedly, but it's part of the larger work and a terrific absolute. I think the artwork is stunning. I love the character of Death, and I'm praying we get that because the animated short they did for Death was spectacular. So to be able to get maybe a live action version of Death, the High Cost of Living, would be a geek out and a half. They're nailing this. I don't care how long it took to get to this point. When you deliver something like this, it has legs and is going to be something that people are going to watch and talk about for a long time. I hope the momentum continues on this, and I hope for Netflix's sake that this is getting people to not only continue to watch, but to potentially jump onto Netflix to watch this along with other programming, because I like Netflix's programming lineup quite a bit. Well, the wife and I were just watching Stranger Things last night, which is phenomenal. Sandman I see being one of those shows. She liked the first episode a great deal. Because of the amount of things we're watching together, I had to start going off on my own with Sandman because I just couldn't wait. I will with the intention of she wants to keep watching it. I will go back and rewatch every episode she hasn't seen, so that way she can be brought up to speed if she so chooses, because it is that good. I will watch it as many times as I need to make everybody happy. So because that just makes me happy.
Oh, big time. And here's the thing with Joanna Constantine. I like how there is that whole family legacy on who she is.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I don't remember that being a strong feeling in the original book. And again, it's been a while since I've read the very issue, the volume 1. So, I'm a little fuzzy on whether they had such, because to me it always it was John Constantine who was that solo act. Not this one seems more like a family legacy kind of thing in magic and all in whatnot. So it's it has a different groove, and that's the other reason why I was cool with them changing up from John Constantine to Joanna. And again, as I said, acting, the casting of it, come on, she's perfect, she's wonderful for it. And again, the character flow, the vibe, the groove that she brought with it, they brought to her character. I'm yes, that fits.
Yep.
Everything, the crucial stuff as to who that character is still was intact. They changed the sex of the character, the gender of the character. Okay, that's all they changed. They didn't change who they are. They didn't change the fundamental, grooviness and just that style to them. They didn't change that. So I'm okay, I'm all right with this.
Lucian's casting's phenomenal. Cain and Abel's casting's phenomenal.
Oh, God, yeah.
And gotta love Goldie.
Yes.
I really like all of that. Just was the casting is really critical in this, and I feel like anything where they made changes or unique options, they delivered on because of just a great casting and really understanding story. And they took, similar to the comic, they are taking me on a journey with this that is just, we're very, very lucky right now. Quality of content we're getting as comic book fans. No matter what you're a fan of, there is so much available out there now. My problem, we've said this multiple times, between Amazon Prime and the cool stuff on there, Netflix, HBO Max, Paramount. There's so many networks out there now that are producing comic book and video game and pop culture related content. It's it's hard to keep up with, and I love it. I love that whatever my mood is, I can find something to watch that matches that mood, and it's quality. The amount of quality that we've got is something that, as a kid, if you'd told me that, hey, yeah, by year 2022, there's going to be too much stuff for you to watch, you're going to feel like you're at a comic shop looking through a spinner rack, I would have laughed. There's no way. There's no way that that's going to be that mainstream. It's that mainstream. The mainstream's now, for the content, at least in visual medium, outside of comics. I pray for some of that to click back the other way. And historically, we haven't seen that giant push the other way. I'm hoping for that something that clicks, just because I want the source material to make as much noise as the TV material. And fingers crossed that something causes that excitement again.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Our next discussion is on Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler, #1. The writer is, of course, the great Tom King. Interior and cover artist is Mitch Gerards. Letterer is Clayton Cowles. Variant covers by Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex St. Clair. Mikhail Janin, David Marquet, and Alejandro Sanchez. Brian Bullard, Giuseppe Camuncoli, and Ari Peranto.
Hang on. I got to stop you right there. Brian Boland. There's no way. I'm letting you go with Brian Bollard.
Sorry, Brian Boland.
That one I hate to do it with, but I love Brian Boland.
Yes.
I love all these artists, but that was one where I'm like, wait a minute, that's definitely wrong. Yes. Sorry.
No. Assistant editor is Jessica Burby, with editor Dave Wilgos. Group editor is Ben Abernathy, and Batman is, of course, created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger.
And apologies for any name butchery on that. And I'm saying that about myself, too, because I do it all the time. Brian Boland, I was not trying to embarrass you. It was more of the situation where I'm like, oh, I love Killing Joke. Which anytime I think of Brian Boland, I think Killing Joke. So that's one where gotta correct that one. What did you think of this? Was this, for me, this was completely not at all, and I say this with a compliment to it. It was a surprise. I knew when they announced this concept of One Bad Day that it was going to be cool to get these one-shots that are very character-focused on Batman's villains. I didn't know what it was going to be, though. And after reading it, I was like, this is what they're doing with this? Oh my, they blew my mind. This one blew my mind. I didn't know the concept that they were going with, and this idea of exploring these these genuine fixations or codes or this driving factor, something from their past that has made them and motivated them to react certain ways. What made the Riddler? What made Batman? And what happens when those things, the floodgates are open, when that wall is knocked down and there's nothing holding you back? What does that mean? How dangerous does that make you as a villain? What lines does it make you cross as a hero? That exploration of this I didn't know that we were getting this from this. And I was like, this is intense. Like, to say it's kicked up to 11 in this one, they went to 21. Yes. Yeah. Wow, this is really, really, if you miss this for any reason, pause this, go read it, then come back, because I don't want to ruin this for anybody. This is must read.
Oh, big time. And I'll tell you, I kept looking for Black Label because it had that feel to it. And I'm like, I don't know if this is Black Label. Is this continuity? Is just the story? Because there's stuff that happens in here. I'm like, is this reality going on? Is this going to be affecting the everyday universe? Or is this just a side story that's its own little blip in time and space? And that was the thing I was like, kind of, because, again, this has some, for me, I was like, did they just, what the heck? Because the Riddler is that great character. And this is a great origin story of the Riddler, telling a different side of what makes him tick, and showing the Bat dealing with the Riddler. And I love how this story played out. I was like, at times, I was like, man, I kept thinking, is this Black Label? Because it had that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, this is not just a story, by the way.
No.
If you had that question. I'm so teasing, because I was like, is this just a story? Nope. It's more. It's so much more than that. I liked that. I knew it was going to be character focused on the Riddler. I had no idea we were going to get this intense exploration of not only his backstory and elements of that we never knew before, like what motivated him to be who he was, to the point where you start to feel a little bit sorry for him. But then you just see the viciousness of the Riddler in this.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that, every so often gets ignored as a joke or, a lesser of the Batman villains, until he reminds you of just how creepy he is. And I thought the Batman movie did a really good job of making the Riddler like a really intense, scary villain, and showing you how his unique approach can be interpreted in a different way. Well, I thought he was scary in the Batman movie. Tom King did something. I mean, that sequence with the tray, where he's being given the food, and I was sitting here. I knew at that point with the tone of this thing, I'm like, oh, no. Don't give him anything. You should, have tongs or something that, you're handing it to him. And even that, I don't know that would help you. I don't know if you're 20 feet away that would, he wouldn't have figured out a way to hurt you really bad. But, this guy is trying to like be buddy with the Riddler and say, "Oh, my kid really loved your riddle and all that kind of thing. Can you give me another one?" And okay, I'll give you another one. All right. And what has and it was something about 4 and 5 and 9 and all that kind of thing. In the meantime, I'm focused on the fact this guy's losing fingers.
Yes,
it was great. What a great sequence that was. A total creep factor as the Riddler's calmly giving him exactly what he was asking for while he's permanently disfiguring him.
Yes. He's permanently hacking off his fingers and having a little fun while he's doing it. But not even the goofy kind of like, kind of, funny.
No.
He's just being creepy, nasty, evil funny. And I'm like, this is like, holy crud. And again, the opening of this book, for me, set a great pace.
Yeah.
And then we see this guy, the everyday guy, powering down because his kid's sick. He's on his way home. Yeah, I'll be there, no problem. Runs into his buddy in the elevator. Hey, man, how you doing? Yeah, And then just the screen goes black. I'm like, wait, what happened? And you're like, oh, okay, he killed him. He died. I'm like, how did he die? And they show it. No fancy, complicated riddles. No giant ducky falls from the sky or anything. No, he just walks up, shoots him in the head.
And does it knowing he was going to be seen. And using it to his advantage because he was sending a message to Batman. I mean, this was all being done to deliberately be caught so that way he could make some noise. So that way he wanted to be caught not only by Batman, but by the police. And he basically is like, you know what? The game's over. This is not a game anymore.
Right.
And that's going to be a problem for you because I am done playing and I am done being second fiddle. Here's what I know. Here's how I'm going to use it. And here's what you're going to do for me. And we are not going to discuss it. Because if we do discuss it, here's what's going to happen to you, to your family. I know who they are. I know where they are. And by the way, Jim, remember what happened in Killing Joke? I'm the one that initiated all of that. What?
Dude.
What?
100%. I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. Oh my God, that is awesome. Just seeing, again, him, and him dealing with Gordon. Again, you see that creepiness, that awesome story, but you have the fact that Riddler laid out all the stuff in Killing Joke. Riddler was the one who laid out everything that happened to Gordon. Then Joker took it his own direction with the torturing stuff. But again, it was all Riddler laying it out. It was like, oh my God, this is absolutely brilliant.
I didn't realize, like the headmaster introduction, I knew that was not going to go well for Edward, but I didn't realize it was his dad until I'm like, oh my gosh, that adds a whole other layer to this whole thing and sets up a whole scenario here. The time shifts in this where we'd go to the past and then we'd come back to the present day and we'd see the funeral and Bruce Wayne being at the funeral trying to console the lady because, he's experienced that kind of loss. And, it again shows his responsibility. The use of riddles as like this thing on a test. And, when I taught for 17 years and, you reevaluate yourself every year and throughout the year where there's things that you do that you think are clever or, interesting ways to grow your students as learners. And you realize that its intended consequence or its intended goal isn't happening. So in the case of this teacher, what he's intending to do with Edward, it's not, the class in general, it's not working. It's, in many ways, it's hurting this kid who's already wounded even more. The life lesson that he's trying to teach him is being grossly misinterpreted. You could see like the people that failed him. His dad failed him. This guy failed him. They're all trying to push him in the wrong ways. And I was connecting with this in the sense that, boy, hey, listen, buddy, don't you think maybe you should go home, maybe take a look at all of your tests and see how many of your kids, if this kid is the third in your class and you've got a full room, maybe you should take a look at that test and go, is this question fair? I liked Edward's point about, shouldn't this question be like extra credit or something? I really liked this whole exploration of the way he was using riddles on a test, that there was nothing being done in that class that would prepare them to be successful on that question. And I'm with Edward on this one where I'm not against that type of thing, but that should be like a bonus. The kind of like, fun brain teaser at the end that if you get this, you'll get some extra credit points.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be something where this is now placing you further down in the class because you couldn't have prepared for this. Even when he cheated, it went wrong.
He cheated wrong, yep.
And I loved that. It's such a cool idea.
Well, and it's funny. I remember in college, I had a teacher who used to do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, his questions were extra credit point. And that was why when Edward was talking about it, I'm like, hey, I remember when that happened. It used to be just a riddle, brain teaser, something like that, always thrown at the end of the test. It was extra credit points, so if you didn't know it, you didn't get hurt. But if you knew it, you could actually add to, give yourself a little boost in the points and all that. But I love how the fact that the one teacher is, how he's honestly trying to help these kids. He doesn't seem like he's an evil guy, but he doesn't know the whole story. Right. He doesn't know what's going on. He's like, it can't be easy having your father be the headmaster. No, it's beyond not easy. The father is a monster, and himself is just this horrible person. So, and none of the other teachers obviously see that. They don't see the abuse that's going on. But it was kind of an interesting thing where I liked how we have, you start feeling bad for, Edward. You feel bad for the teacher because he's not intentionally trying to hurt his people, and but each of them have their own part that they play in the birth of the Riddler. And I thought that for me was a really neat way of handling it. How it was just it was just happenstance, a turn of events that ends up creating the Riddler.
It's funny. I look at some of the Riddlers like incorrectly. That whole like where he's pondering it afterwards, and there's that. You see that clear self-loathing that he has at that point in time. And I didn't realize it till much later in life that I had long stretches of my life where I had self-loathing. And I'm not saying it's on this level, don't get me wrong. But you look at that and you sit there and go, there were periods of time where I really did not like me. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know it. And I think everybody has points in their life where they have that. I had long stretches. Nothing on this level because I was fortunate that I had really good parents and a support system in place that kind of gets you through all of that. But I don't think it's something that even my parents ever knew. You look at stuff like this and you're like, I can see how when he had so much working against him, boy, that takes you down a very, you're already going down a dark place. And there is literally no safety net. This guy had no safety net. Actually, he had gasoline being thrown on a fire. And I really appreciated that exploration in this story where you sit there and go, you got to appreciate the people around you that help boost you up, help get you over those things, because otherwise you can see how somebody winds up in not only in this place, but it keeps growing. I thought this was Edward underwater. Did you, at first when I saw that piece, and then I'm like, oh, wait, that's not him. That's one of his henchmen that Batman's, basically using to try and get the information that he's looking for. And Bruce, got all the information there. But even when Gordon brings it up later on that they couldn't get anything out of this guy because he said he's already talked too much, that he told Batman everything. Everything.
Yeah. Oh, again, seeing Bruce go this far.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things that art read through because at first I'm sitting there, I'm like, when I was first reading it, all the words upside down. And I didn't notice the shark was even drawn upside down. And then, it was when you flip the page, you see he's dunking. I'm like, oh, Jim, you're an idiot. So, I immediately went back and really appreciated that scene even more, the artwork on it, because he's dunked in the lake or the bay, upside down. So they changed the art around. And I thought that for me, that was a really cool sequence, but also it really does show Bruce going overboard in his dealings with this.
Yeah.
Which, and a lot of it comes from the fact that, he attends the funeral and he sees the grieving widow, and it just, you could tell that really sent Batman over the edge. Just the pain that this lady's going through. He, again, is reminded of his own personal pain from his childhood and the fact that there's no riddle. There's no nothing. They was just walked up to him, shot him in the head, and waited for the police, held up the card that has the bat symbol on it because he wants to talk to the bat. And even when Gordon was questioning him, he's like, hey, where's the bat? And because the bat doesn't show, the Riddler continues on and making it worse. I was like, this is an absolute brilliant story.
Yeah, that's the piece that I really loved about this, was the brilliant story. This needed to be this extended story, too, where I didn't want this broken up over multiple issues. It needed to be like a tome where you're reading your way through, and I was like, wow, this is like going... I didn't realize the page count on this or what it was going to be. And then I started reading through it, and I'm like, wow, this needs every bit of this page count. It needed some of these pages, like there's that one where Batman's driving away from Wayne Manor, and you see him winding down the hill as he's kind of, the Batmobile's kind of going through. And it was gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. It leads to this sequence where there's this internal thought where he's analyzing, what's the riddle and that's going on. There's a narrative that's going on at that point about Enigma. And you see him capture a villain along the way where there is a guy who is holding up a woman. And it was this fluid motion of he pushes a button in the Batmobile, these bolas come like squealing out, wrap the guy up, and he just keeps going on. I thought it was so wacky cool that was just an organic little tiny detail that didn't have anything really to do with the larger story other than to set the atmosphere of, in Gotham, Batman's always multitasking. And I really loved the workflow that was going through in that sequence as he's continuing to investigate Enigma and trying to get to the bottom of what's going on here, thinking that Batman is going to somehow win and not seeing what's really coming here, that Riddler is holding all the cards. In many ways, he is not the same Riddler. He's trying to analyze somebody who is no longer the same man.
Right. And that's one of the things I loved about this story. Was we got in the mind of the Bat going on where he's trying to break stuff down.
Yep.
And this is one of those things where a lot of times, some of my favorite Tom King stories have been where they don't have the thought balloons and you're just going on what you're seeing. This one, I love the fact that we have all this stuff going on, that we're seeing all the things go through Bruce's mind as he's doing it. Like you said, how he's doing that. Doing the multitasking, where he captures the one guy, bullet, doesn't even break stride, continues on, because he's actually going out to question Edward's father. And I love just how that all played out, where, again, it's, the artwork, of him going down driving through Gotham. It's a heavy greenish tint to it, which they normally don't do on Gotham. Gotham usually is the darker blues, the purples, that kind of stuff. But this has kind of like a greenish tint to it, which, again, it gave it that kind of different vibe to it, which I kind of really liked, how they didn't follow the usual palette on this. Because this is, again, we're dealing with the Riddler, so that's green focus, but this isn't like the typical bright green Riddler, I got a riddle for you, riddle me this. No, there's something darker, there's something grimmer, there's something just not Riddler about the Riddler right now. So I like the fact that they have this, this green tint to it, but it's a dirty green, versus a cleaner, brighter neon type of green that a lot of times you get with the Riddler.
Yeah, there's something really, really smart in how all of this is being put together to kind of embrace color tones, because that happens even in the school sequences where you see them there. There's a very specific palette that's chosen with different shades that bring things out, and I liked I want to say on paper it looks like a more simplistic color palette, but it's not. What they do is they stick to a very set color palette and then use different, dark and lighter shades of it to bring it out and get more pop. For some reason, it just worked so well in all of this to set it like a unique atmosphere. I really appreciated the artistic choices, and I don't feel like I'm explaining them as well as I should be for how much I really enjoyed the visual style of this book. Also, the use of black panels I thought were really terrific throughout this. They used them sparingly, but when they did, they were for emphasis. like the single words "blam" and things like that to put dramatic moments and dangerous moments in place, or even just fading to black in a certain sequence where you are now in your mind left to figure out what you think just happened there. And even whether they explain it or not, because there's sequences where they explain it, and there's others, especially at the end, where they clearly do not. And I think both worked, getting your mind to think through what you think. And I always feel like your mind's going to go somewhere far more vivid than what they put on the page, because they took you so far in the story. They took you so far in that journey and are like, all right, we messed with you. We laid out a tapestry here for you. Now let your head do the work for these next couple panels. Brilliant choice. Great combination of writing and art to lead us on that journey. This was a unique thriller for that.
Oh, God, yeah. And, again, I love the sequences with Bat and the father.
Yep.
That, again, I liked how they spread it out over a couple pages, and you really do see what a son of a gun that father is. He actually, and he is just as evil as the Riddler. If not, he's not killing people, but he is torturing, children, and it is horrific. And part of me really wanted to see something horrific happen to that man, but he's just left to stew in his own misery, basically. But it is kind of interesting that Riddler didn't take him out. Riddler could have done so much stuff to his own father, but he chose not to. And I think that for me is an interesting take, in that the Riddler let him suffer, because you see the house as Bruce pulled up. You see the conditions he's living. He probably got dismissed, from his job. So I'm assuming, being the father of the Riddler kind of caught up to him, and so there was some suffering that way. But it was just a really good explanation as to who he is and who the Riddler is and where he comes from. I absolutely love this.
The Riddler's escape plan, where he had all the guards shoot themselves, shoot each other, I should say, because of the fact that he set up a scenario where they were emotionally distraught. And Gordon's left there, and Riddler's calmly saying, "Gordon, do you think you could call him again? I'd very much appreciate it." This, again, a very different Riddler who is holding all the cards. This is where maybe I'm a little wrong in saying the game's over, but the game has certainly changed, because it is now a very different game that he's playing. If he's still playing a game, if you want to still say that, it's a very, very different game that he's playing there.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, I love just the Riddler playing them. This for me was a great sequence. Whenever they have moments like this, where you see the Riddler's he knows exactly how he's manipulating people. Again, it does show just that level of intelligence that he has. He's got that, we shall say it, strategery going on, where he has that level of where he thinks, and it's everyone's playing checkers, he's playing chess. But even he's playing chess at a master level. It's that intelligence. I love just seeing that, along with this great, just evil, just this creep factor, this evil that he is. I'm absolutely loving this character, and it so fits in with what we saw the Riddler in the movie. And then I love especially the scene where after he gets all the guards to kill themselves, he doesn't try to escape. That's not his plan. His plan isn't to escape. His plan is to get the Bat in there. He wants to have that conversation with the Bat.
Yeah. And that's something where it's all about power now. He has changed the power structure of an entire city. Anybody from the outside, nobody wants to come into this place. Nobody wants to be attached. It's like, don't even call me, because I don't want you putting my name in your mouth. I don't want him looking at me at all. That's power right there. I'm not saying it's healthy power or good power, but it's an example of corrupted power, right? The Riddler now has got people so afraid of him that they won't touch this place with a 10-foot pole. That has left Gotham in the same kind of isolation that we've seen in movies where the bridges have been knocked out and stuff like that. No man's land, that kind of thing. It's every bit that right now. I love when he was shooting the basketball as he's talking to Batman. I mean, talk about a level of confidence there. He is shooting hoops because he's so confident of where the situation is right now.
Well, it also plays back to with him when he was a kid.
Yep.
Because, and I love how when Bat's talking to Bat is talking to the father,
yep.
and the father's talking about everything was going on until that thing on a basketball court. And then we see what happens on the basketball court where Riddler, gets caught cheating,
yep.
and then kills the guy. Actually kills the teacher. His first kill was on that basketball court. So now we're back to the Riddler present day. He's on the basketball court. And I love just how they use that throughout the book.
That was something that, and the interesting piece of laying out, not only do I know who you are, I know your entire family. I know all the kids. I've always known. Yeah. Now is the time where that thing that we all knew as readers that he knew, now he is playing it and using it to his advantage. And basically sitting here saying, well, maybe it's not going to be the Robins. Maybe it'll be one of the younger ones. Maybe Stephanie or Cassandra. But someone. Or what about a stranger? Maybe I just do it with a stranger. And this, you knowing that it's because of you. That I did this because of you. The piece that he's pushing right here is he knows that Bruce's thing is he won't kill. Bruce has mercy. He is manipulating what he thinks are the care. He knows what was holding him back. So he is using that on Bruce now. And basically the power that Bruce had over him in his mind, he's now reversed it. He's reversed the dynamic. And it's a very powerful thing when you see that right now.
Oh, big time. And again, I love how Nigma had everything set up with, on that basketball court, on that ready to leave, he knew Bruce wouldn't stop him because of the innocent lives. He's killed how many people already? He's like, hey, you don't test me on this. People will die again. And it's not even just his Robins, not even his family, a complete and total stranger. And again, the greatest weakness of any of these superheroes are the fact that they protect the innocent. It's absolutely wonderful. And I love how the fact that he's like, no more riddles. I don't need a riddle. I don't need to do that. I don't have some sickness. He chose to do that. Now you're seeing what happens when he stops using the riddles. You really see just that the viciousness, the evil that is the Riddler.
Batman setting him up at the end was amazing. I thought it was just such a great sequence. I'm not usually a fan of sequences where I'm left to think Batman may have killed him. In this case, it worked. You see, I was smart. I assumed he was who he was. He tells a riddle, you solve it, case closed. I assumed he couldn't question himself, that he couldn't change, that he would never let go of the reins holding him back. That was my mistake. Thinking I knew him. Assuming there was no limit to his fun. I was smart and I was a fool, just like him. You see, now, in his room by himself, he is making the same smart mistake I did. He assumes I can't change, that I can't question myself, that I can't let go of my own reins, that there is no limit to my mercy. And he assumes this isn't a recording, that I'm actually on this rooftop, actually saying these things. Riddle me this, Edward. Though we meet but once, you know me forever after. What am I? Blank, 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 blank. What an amazing, amazing ending to this thing. I love that your imagination can go to a whole bunch of different places. You can interpret that, where that story's going to go, wherever it is.
Well, the answer to that riddle is death.
Right.
So that's the thing. Did Batman just kill the Riddler? And I love that. I love the fact that we don't know. That's why I kept going back and looking for any type of Black Label. Because if this was Black Label, yes, he did kill him. If it's not Black Label, I'm like, I don't know. Did he do it?
Well, I don't know that Black Label's the only way you get stories like this. You know what I'm saying?
I get you.
Yeah, so I think you're jumping to it being Black Label. I'm more agreeing with your thinking that, like, hey, this should be or could be considered Black Label from it. Sometimes a great story is just that, a great story. It doesn't need to have that branding, but I couldn't agree with you more on why you're going there. So I just really love that DC's doing stuff like this where they're like, let's tell a great Batman Riddler story. And let's just make it a great Batman Riddler story. I'm not usually a fan of that with Bruce. It's the one thing, like Batman Begins, it remains my favorite Batman movie. Because of the in-depth exploration of Bruce's origin story. because we never really see that on screen where it's all about Bruce. It's usually about the villains and Bruce's reaction to the villains, right? Well, that one was so much more about the Bat, building the Bat. For me as a geeky fan, like, wow, what a refreshing thing to be able to see that way on screen. My one issue with that one was the ending. Yeah. And the choice there to not save somebody. That's the stickling point. So I'm not, again, my favorite Batman movie, but not saying it's not without flaws. This is something where I'm like, it's strange for me to say I am not only completely okay with it, I think it was a brilliant ending for this story. This story pushed it there, and I actually loved every element of this story, and it's not usually my cup of tea when it comes to Batman. So kudos to the creative team for making me to the point of changing ideologies or thinking. I'm like, well, you've convinced me that I'd be okay with it. Not only okay with it, I would applaud a Batman story like this. Because I do. I think this was really great. This was bold.
And here's the thing. One thing I'm hoping for is that every one of these One Bad Days have an ending similar to this where we are questioning what just happened. What just happened on that? You know?
Yeah, here's what I don't want. I don't want it all to be like Batman killing people. But,
no.
But I was afraid that's where you were going to go. That's why I'm even referencing it. But then you clarified what you were doing, and I'm like sitting here like, oh, Jim's got onto something there where you're kind of left to interpret it. I guess I'm going to build on something that you're saying. Maybe say it slightly differently. Yes to what you just said. I like that option. The other piece I like is that all of these are meant to be terrific standalones that tell a really good, strong story, that the story drives the direction. And it's kind of a cool thing.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
Our next discussion is going to be on DC Mech #1. Kenny Porter is the writer. Baldemar Rivas is the artist. Mike Spicer on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. Baldemar Rivas on cover and variant cover. Dan Mora, Ricardo Lopez Ortiz, and Carl Kerschel on the variant covers. Dave Wheelgo's editor. Ben Abernathy group editor. Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. And apologies for any name butchery on this creative team. This was a very pleasant surprise. I really wanted to talk about this one on the show just because, okay, what is DC Mech? I didn't know. I walked into this one blind. And I'm glad that you wanted to do this one too, because it was a fun, unique story. It's actually, this is kind of an interesting episode of that, right? Because I think the story that we just got, the Batman one that we talked about, was a very unique tale. And this one starts, I didn't expect this to start off with the Justice Society of America, but then the Justice Society of America facing a villain that is seriously overpowered, a superpowered like mecha parademon thing that came in, and basically, I mean, Dr. Fate becomes the Kenny of the Justice Society, where he's like smashed at the beginning. You see his head flying. That's Dr. Fate, who has some serious power levels, was all of a sudden destroyed. In a work of true fiction, he then takes out Hawkman. And I mean, clearly, this is again a fictional piece because that wouldn't happen. I actually love that you see Kendra then flying into action, and you see the heavy hitters of the team, and they're recognizing the fact that it is not only they lost many of their numbers, but it is taking everything they've got to just take out one of these. And that was an advanced scout. That was just an advanced scout. I loved that because in this timeline, that ends the Age of Heroes, and people no longer have confidence in their heroes. They want something else. They want, the heroes were what they were looking to before, and now they're looking at God, like, what are you guys doing to like step it up? Because this is real danger.
One of the things I liked about that sequence, again, it is hard to see a Hawk die, but I like the fact that he dies pushing Shayera out of the way.
Oh yeah.
So again, he's the Hawk, so he's going to protect. And then just that scene, that following scene, Justice Society, give him hell. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I loved that sequence with her just come flying in with, and even then, though, there's still out-muscled, outgunned. But it was really cool seeing, Wildcat have Starman charge up his fists so he can get a blow, and then Hawkgirl just coming down from the upper atmosphere, nth metal to the head, taking that thing out. How much of power they had to build up just to take one of them down. I love this sequence opening up because, again, this was a great reason why they went to mech, why they went the tech side as opposed to, just keeping their regular heroes, their regular stuff, because all of them together couldn't take out one of them. How much body count did they lose in just taking out one? This, for me, a couple quick pages explaining why they had to go the mech side.
Yep.
Why they needed that. This wasn't about, they made it part of the story, part of the need, so that when we get to the present day and the future, you understand what's going on.
And their life changed at that moment because they all had to become scientists. They all had to work together as a team to develop that piece. And I mistakenly called her Kendra before because of the look. I'm so used to Kendra with the JSA that it's like, no, remember his wife is Shaira. And I love that we get to see that, and that then there's decades of that before we get to see this happen to Krypton.
Yeah.
And this changed the whole landscape of what was happening in Krypton. The escape from Krypton was not about the way that planet was going down. It was about getting basically this anti-life, getting away from that. And I love that we have this new sort of battle that's going on with New Genesis and Krypton working together, and them getting basically their mech away and their son to escape because this prototype might be a way for this Earth to survive the anti-life engine. The changes that come from this are really, really strong. I liked seeing this version of Superman's origin and, seeing his friendly little onboard guidance AI co-pilot who is teaching him along the way. That reimagining of that, Superman's favorite robot, I thought was one of the, what is it, Keelix?
Keelix.
Yeah, Keelix. I don't know if I was pronouncing that right. But I love Keelix. I mean, in the comics, I just know, I think I pronounced that character's name different every single time in my head. But I absolutely love that robot. And I like that it was an AI this time that's being handled a little bit differently because this is a very different storyline.
Oh, definitely. And it keeps the groove of what we expect for the Superman origin story. Krypton's dying. The parents, it's the last desperation, to save their son, but also to save the universe. So it's that ultimate parent sacrifice, that we keep seeing, but this time, the Krypton's not dying because of its own explosion. It's dying because Apocalypse is attacking it. So we've got New Genesis has already fallen. So we know now, in the war between Apocalypse and New Genesis, Apocalypse won. What happens after Apocalypse wins? It continues on destroying the rest of the known universe and conquering it because that's what he does. This is where it's playing out. So I loved seeing New Genesis on Krypton, the final battle, which they ultimately lose, but the last bastion of hope. Kal-El is sent to Earth to possibly one day rise up and stop this evil, empire attack, stopping Apocalypse once and for all. I love, again, little tweak to the Superman origin, but it's still key and, it still keeps the key elements of who is Superman.
Right. I couldn't agree more. The Flash story I thought was really neat because it has all the elements of what we love about the Flash. We have, Barry's handing things off to Wally, and we've got just like a different version of what's going on here with this kind of the way the mech's being handled and what the rules of engagement are. You've got a rogues gallery who is all mech based. The relationship between him and Batman and the friendship that had existed between Batman and Barry, I loved how all of that was happening, and seeing Alfred in this was a total geek out. Batman being Earth's protector, you see him having, again, that leadership role that he had before, being like the strategic leader and what he's doing, all playing out here. Again, we get an attack now where it's three of them attacking, and I loved seeing that organic shift to the three of them realizing they're going up against three of these things. The best they can do is hope to take down a couple of them and hopefully buy time for the rest of the Earth to be able to handle that. They were heading into what they were thinking was going to be their last mission in that moment.
Oh, definitely.
Until Superman showed up, which I really loved.
And I loved how when we get the cool Alfred scene, of course, he's talking about his godmother, who we both know that's got to be the Hawk. It's got to be the godmother that he's referring to. You know, Shaira is Bruce's godmother, so that kind of added to it. I don't know if...
Why are you thinking that that's Shaira? I'm not saying that you're wrong, but why are you thinking that that's Shaira?
First name that popped in my head when he said godmother. Because, just because of the whole mech and how Bruce got pulled into it, I'm seeing this as a different way for Bruce to get pulled into this. Versus actually the regular origin of the Bat. If we're dealing with a world of mech, unless the father was somehow connected to it, I don't know. But for me, I 100% thought Shaira was Bruce's godmother.
I didn't get that at all, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not seeing what would...
Well, because you think about it, the origin of the Bat in regular stories is Crime Alley, parents get killed, he must avenge it, make sure nobody else suffers the way he suffers.
How do you know that didn't happen here?
It very easily could have. But for me, I'm seeing this as somehow Shaira and the Waynes are connected because of the Wayne technology, the Wayne industries, and all that stuff. So with Wayne providing the funding to help Shaira develop all the tech, she became Bruce's godmother. She became Bruce's godmother, so that's why he gets pulled into it. The whole Bat origin could also still be the same, where bats scare him, so it's time for his enemies to fear what he dread, kind of line, or I don't know. There still is his parents could still be dead, but for me, I saw that's what brought Bruce into this was through his connection with Shaira. Okay.
And here's the thing, that could be, like, the origin of Batman could still be the same, but the godmother piece, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm that's a potential story piece. There's nothing that you said that I think is wrong. I just don't know where you're interpreting things off the page, and I like it. I mean, I think you're on an interesting path. For right now, tentatively, I'm in at least agreement that everything you're saying seems logical.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really delve into who the godmother is because they don't really identify who that is. But I like your logic. It would make a lot of sense considering what happened with the JSA. So we'll see. Darkseid and the fact that he's not able to, because of attacks that were happening along the way, he's not able to bring the anti-life engine to Earth at this point in time, but he's still building to that. And this is leading to a full-scale attack was... really cool. I loved Superman's entrance in this. I thought it was really a great way to bring him in. And he's like, "Hi, my name is Kal-El. Is everyone okay?" And, Bruce is kind of like, "Alien? Not here." That initial meeting was, really, really interesting. I could see why Bruce reacted the way that he did. Certainly, I like that there was a different build on the both, too. Where Clark is not he's not the pumped-up Superman that we're used to because of the fact that he's been in the Mac, and it's a different sort of origin for him. Bruce's armored outfit I really thought super cool and makes sense for this mech world. It was something that the initial opening issue captivating me and giving me something neat and different. This was fun, but the right kind of fun. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I'm anticipating issue 2. I can't wait to continue following this. This is one I will be on board for the entire ride.
Oh, big time. One of the things I liked, really liked with the explanation as to why the parademons are so powerful. Mm-hmm. It's not just big mech that are parademons going on. They're actually harvesting and mining off of the source wall.
Yeah.
So they've got an even level above what would be an alien tech advantage. And I think that for me was a neat little stuff that was kind of mentioned throughout the throughout the Darkseid moments. And I thought that was kind of a cool, just again, nice little explanation as to why they're so powerful, why this thing is beyond what they would normally expect.
This would be a great video game where you could play as either hero or villain mechs. There being advantages to each kind of mech. And then, but both sides have to deal with battling parademons. You could do like a Fortnite kind of thing with this, but being able to be on opposing sides. I just think it would be like where you make there some real incentives to play either as the villains or the heroes, that there's unique power sets and customizations that you get from both sides that would draw people. But tell me that wouldn't be fun to like hop on and be able to say, what are we going to do today? Let's play as villains.
And
go
update your armor and just all that kind of stuff, yeah.
But at any point in time, the parademons could attack. Darkseid could attack. And then, doesn't matter what side you're on, like there's an incentive and goal to facing each other. So there's reasons why you want to face the opposite team. If you're villains or heroes, your squad, you want your squad to go and fight for that. But knowing that at any point in time, all of a sudden the game could change because then you're both being attacked. And you have to make the decision either to team up with the heroes and fight or continue to be fighting each other and hoping that you can survive the parademon assault. I think it would lead to some interesting gaming possibilities. All I was thinking about in this, I'm like, this is like really a cool concept that could play into being like this open world kind of fun video game battleground.
Oh, definitely.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. You can also email us at ragingbullets@gmail.com if that's your preferred way. We just had a great email on this episode, so feel free to send us anything you'd like to talk about on the podcast. RagingBullets.com is our show website, which feeds into our Facebook fan page and our Twitter. That's the first place we post any new episodes that are coming out. We are also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. And there's actually, if you go on Facebook looking for Raging Bullets, you'll see there's 2 Facebook group communities. One is our old one, where I am posting episodes now and directing people to our new Facebook group community. Facebook, because of ours got flagged, and I think it's because of the title of the podcast.
I think so.
Yeah, Flag didn't shut it down for a little while, so we started a new one, and we just kept going with the new one. So I wanted people to have a vehicle to get to the new one. I want to thank everybody in our Facebook group community, though, who is posting news and memes and things that are up there. I absolutely love it. We have devoted whole segments to that. And please know, those segments are really produced by our Facebook group community who have become great partners of the podcast. So thank you for everyone that takes time out of your day to say, ooh, this is a cool ad. Let me get this over to Raging Bullets. This is something I want the guys to be able to talk about on the show. Because obviously, the Facebook group community is a segment of our audience. And by sharing those there, you're giving an opportunity to get that news out to everybody who listens to this podcast. So thank you so much for everyone who takes time doing that. Please know you are appreciated by us. The About Us section of our show website is where you can connect with our personal Facebook pages, any other social media from us, and also gaming platforms. We love interacting with all of you. Please feel free to add us on any of those platforms because it's a great chance for us to connect with you. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what's going on at DCBS?
We have Punchline, the Gotham game, issue 1 of 6, 50% off, only $1.99. And Riddler, year 1, issue 1 of 6, also 50% off, only $2.49. Thank you, DCBS.
InStockTrades.com, of course, has Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow trade paperback, $19.99 regularly, 45% off, only $10.99. Batman Rebirth, the Deluxe Edition, Book 6 hardcover, $34.99 regularly, 45% off, only $19.24. Robin and Batman hardcover, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. And the recently released Batman Earth 1 Complete Collection trade paperback, $39.99 regularly, 45% off, only $21.99. I actually sent one of those out to one of our listeners today because they won our last contest. So it's great to see that book out there. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, we're going to be back and take a look at The Flash and Dark Crisis Young Justice as we continue to follow that event. We will see you next week.
Bye!
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim?
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Jim,
it's right there.
Jim,
I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.